Hello, this is Andrew Perkins, and this is part 11 in creating a blog using the CakePHP framework. In this video, we're going to use the bake script. Over the next two videos, I'm going to show you how we can build the blog that we've already built, and additionally, in the next video, create associated comments for those posts in just a matter of minutes using the Cake console and its bake script. The first thing I need to show you is inside of our database. This is the TutBlog database that we've been using. I've added a new table called comments. It has an ID field, it's an int type, it auto increments, and it's a primary key. The second one here is an int field. It's called post_ID. I am using a naming convention here in order to set up a foreign key to relate comments to posts. By calling this post_ID, that's the singular version of our posts table, we can use this as a foreign key to relate these individual comments to a single post using CakePHP's associations. Cake will link all of this up for us just by making this one field and naming it correctly. After that, I have a name field to hold the commenter's name. It's a varchar type. A content field to hold the content of the comment. It's a text type. And then two date time fields for the created and modified dates of the comments. So what we're going to do is have Bake create us a brand new CakePHP application. We're going to use this same database, but we'll no longer be using the TutBlog CakePHP application. We're going to have Bake create a new one. So I'll bring up a command prompt here, and I'm going to change directories into my WAMP www folder, and here I can run the cake bake command, and I can also include what I want the name of the new CakePHP application to be. I'm going to call it TutBlog2. There we go, and that opens up our Cake console. It says it's going to bake a new project. It's telling you where it's baking from. This is our Cake installation, the skeleton directory that we set up in the previous video that we're going to bake from, and it's telling you where it's going to bake to. It's going to create a new folder called TutBlog2, and it's going to put the CakePHP framework inside of there. Something to keep in mind when you bake a new CakePHP app is that it does not generate the Cake folder for you. It generates all of the scripts and folders that are inside of the app folder and puts those into this new folder that you tell it to make. It then references everything from the skeleton app that you set up, that we set up in the previous video. So there's no need to navigate into the app folder before running the cake bake command. You can use that inside of the root folder of bake generated applications. So if this looks okay, you can just hit Y for yes, and no for verbose output, and that will, there we go, that'll create our new CakePHP application. It even generates the random hash and seed for our security.salt and cipher seed. It now wants us to set up our database configuration file, so we're going to leave the name as default and just hit enter. We're going to leave the driver as MySQL. We do not need a persistent connection, so just hit enter and it'll enter in this default value of no. We're going to leave the database as host, and we do not need a port. We'll leave the user as root. The password will be root, and the database name, we're going to use the same database. It's going to be TutBlog, and we do not need a table prefix, nor do we need table encoding. So if your database configuration looks okay, just hit enter. It asks if we want another database configuration. No, we do not. Just hit enter. And there we go. If we go to our browser, instead of going to TutBlog, we can now go to TutBlog2, and we can see our new TutBlog2 application is up and running. It tells you it got baked by CakePHP. So now we can use the Cake console to bake our model, views, and controller for our posts table. We'll first change directories into the TutBlog2 folder, and we can run the cake bake command. And here we can use the interactive bake shell to bake our model, view, and controller. So you should start off by baking your model. So use an M here to state that you want to do a model. And you now need to choose the table in your database that you want to build the model upon. We're going to do it for our posts table, so we'll choose 2. It asks if we want to specify some validation criteria for our fields. We're going to say yes. Let me make this a little bigger. Much bigger. Oh, come on. There we go. And this wants to set up validations for our ID field. We don't need any, so we're going to use 28 for do not do any validation for this field. The next is for our title field. We're going to use 19 to ensure that our title is not empty. It asks if we want another validation role for this field. No, we do not. Now we'll set up validation for our body field. It's going to be 19. It asks if we want another role for this field. We'll say no. Now it wants to set up validations for our created field. We don't need any for this, so we're going to use 28. And do we want any validations for our modified field? We're going to use 28 for this as well. We don't need any validations for the created or modified fields. It now wants to set up our model associations. We're going to say yes, we do want to set these up. If you recall, when we set up our comments table, we created that post_ID field, and because of this, the bake script recognizes, based on the database design, that the comments belong to a post, and similarly that our post has many comments. And CakePHP detects this and will set up the association properly. So here we just say yes, post has many comment. It asks if we'd like to set up additional associations. We'll say no. And this gives you an overview of what the model will look like. Just hit enter. It now asks if we want to set up any tests. We'll say no. And there we go, our model has been created. We can now create our controller by typing C and hitting enter. We need to specify we want to create a controller for our posts, so enter 2. It asks if we'd like to build our controller interactively. We'll say yes. It asks if you want to use dynamic scaffolding. No, we do not. It now asks if we want to create some basic class methods. These are the class methods that'll do CRUD for us: create, read, update, and delete. So we want to say yes to this. It asks if we want to generate some class methods for admin routing. We're going to say no. We're not covering admin routing here. It asks if we want additional helpers. We're going to say no. It asks if we want additional components. We're going to say no. And it asks if we want to use our session flash messages. We do want those, so say yes for that one. And if your controller looks okay, just hit Y to say yes, create the controller. It now asks if we want to set up tests. We'll say no. And our controller has been created. We can now create our views. We'll type V for view. And we need to choose to create views for our posts, so enter a 2 here. It now asks if we want to bake our views interactively. We'll say yes. It now asks if we want to create views for our CRUD that we had our controller generate. This is why you need to create your model and controller before doing your views. So we're going to say yes here, create views for CRUD. It asks if we need views for admin routing. We skipped admin routing and we're not going to cover that, so enter no here. And there we go, our views have been created. We now have a full application running for our posts table, and we can go to our browser and type in posts. And we can see here that we now have an interface for our posts. We can add a new post, we can view, edit, and delete. We already know how to do this, so I'm not going to show you all of those. We also have buttons here to list comments and add new comments. Those comments do not work yet, as we have not baked our comments in, but in the next video we will bake those and then we'll test out the whole application. So I'll see you in the next video.